Hello and welcome to the hearing. I'm John.
And from Chicago's North Side, I am Scotto.
And before we get to this week's album, just want to quickly say rest in peace, Vic Fleck. He was the guitarist who played on the James Bond theme, also did a lot of stuff with Tom Jones, played in a scene at the end of A Hard Day's Night. There's a guitar solo while Ringo is wandering around somewhere. I don't know, I've never seen it, but yeah, apparently that's iconic. I mean, it's the Beatles.
That
Um,
Bond solo, though, that has to be one of the
yeah,
coolest
I mean,
solos. I mean, it's the definition of cool, you know?
every guitar player learns that riff right after we learn "Smoke on the Water." It's absolutely iconic. Um, he should have been better known. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I really had heard his name until today, honestly.
I didn't know who he was until I saw Guitar World on Facebook. Had a story about him, and oh, that's the guy who played the James Bond theme. Oh, he just passed away. That's sad. So I just wanted to mention it. Anyway, on to this week's album, which is from 1979, Off the Wall by Michael Jackson. This is our tribute to the late, great Quincy Jones, who produced the album. Michael Jackson was the king of pop and really doesn't need any more introduction than that. Honestly, what else can I say?
There were five of them, I think.
Off the Wall was his fifth solo studio album and his first to be produced by Quincy Jones. The album was a deliberate departure from his previous ones, which were a continuation of the Jackson 5 sound, and was intended to establish Jackson's identity as a solo artist. Off the Wall was released on August 10th, 1979 on Epic Records, produced by Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, and features Michael Jackson on vocals and percussion, and a long, long list of very well-known session musicians. Check
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
some we will be calling out,
Oh,
definitely.
definitely. Particularly the bass player on most of them,
Yes,
because
that's
for
what I'm
me,
thinking too. We are on the same page, I think, here.
the late great Louis Johnson. Um,
I wasn't familiar with him all that much. Well, I mean, I've heard his work, obviously, but did not know his name until,
I
working
wouldn't
on
if I weren't a
this.
bass player.
And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Reminder: I don't edit any songs into our reviews for copyright reasons, but on our blog at johnscotto.wordpress.com, you'll find links to Off the Wall on Spotify and YouTube, so you can follow along if you'd like. Track one: Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. The first of two songs where Michael Jackson has sole writing credit, and three where he gets a writing credit. He shares it on another one. Um, Love that opening bass. I think I agree with Michael Jackson about the strings. Do you want to tell that story? Because I don't think you told it
Really?
on air.
Yeah, I don't think I told it on air, but for what I heard, it was there's an interview with Quincy Jones where Michael did not want that violin at the intro, the and right, and and he said it got in the way of his groove, and so he told Quincy that, and the interview asked, "Well, what'd you tell Michael?" And he said, "I said, hell no." That's what should get you into it, and I'm definitely Team Quincy on this one.
It's just a little too disco for my taste.
But that's what this is. This is a disco album.
But for me, it gets so close to proper funk so often.
And I think it's also the thing with the Quincy Michael relationship is that they're always fusing things together.
Definitely.
Now, one thing that this song definitely could have done without was whatever that mumbly pre-intro was that Michael Jackson
Yeah.
has. Like, I had never noticed that before.
Uh,
I mean,
I think it might get cut from the radio version. I
I
think it just kicks off that synth riff, or the string riff,
I
rather.
I listen to when I do these reviews. I do multiple listens, of course.
Mm.
I do listen on Spotify and I listen on YouTube Music.
Uh,
The YouTube Music version played a 4-minute single version of
okay.
it, and it still had the mumbly
Okay. Okay.
intro in it. And really, though, on paper, this is not a good song. I mean, it's mostly just falsetto on top of falsetto. Uh, you know, there's the groove with the guitars and some funk towards the end, but a lot of it is Quincy's,
Yeah.
power here, and that those strings and just the atmosphere he creates.
I forget who to attribute to this to because I forgot to watch the video again, but someone he'd worked with called him a casting director
That makes sense.
and said that he's the one guy who could make a solo album without writing or playing a note.
It's the whole thing, yeah.
It's about his Rolodex. It's about the musicians and writers he could pull in to work on a project.
He really just elevates this rambling mess that Jackson is singing. I mean, it's like there's a good song going on in spite of Michael, who's just pretty much singing about fucking, but using the word force, which I'm wondering if he's actually referencing
I
Star
have that in my
Wars.
notes too. It would not surprise me if he pulled that from Star Wars.
Because, Michael Jackson's a pretty big nerd and a movie
Uh-huh.
buff,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
probably saw Star Wars 50 times
right.
between 77
Yeah.
and when this album came out in 79.
The choruses keep on with the force don't stop till you get enough. And there's a line in at least the first verse that mentions the force. So yeah, I'm sure he got that from Star Wars.
I don't know. I should have done a word count of how many times he uses the word force.
Uh,
It's in every line,
okay. I
I
only
mean,
noticed it in the chorus in the very beginning. But it's got an amazing groove. Love all the extra percussion. I heard the demo version that he did. It was just Michael and some of his siblings um, recording it, and a lot of that percussion that's on that, which is just comes from banging like bottles and shit, is
okay.
on the track.
Yeah, there's so much going on with this.
Um,
It is kind of a wall of sound in
yeah,
itself.
love the guitars on either side. Great horn parts in the chorus. I like the two vocal parts at the end of the verse. They kind of call in response to himself.
Yeah.
Great guitar-like synth solo. I think that's George Duke.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That break in the middle where the keys just come up and it's really
Mm,
funky and
yeah,
it kind of wakes you up from whatever he's going on about with the falsetto. So it's like it's a really odd song if you think about it.
yeah.
And Quincy is definitely the person like that made this what it
Mm.
is.
Track two, Rock With You. Great opening drum fill. Good groove. The strings are just too disco for me, but love that guitar sound. Very nice, kind of whiny funk sound. Nice harmonies in the pre-chorus and chorus. I think the vocals are maybe mixed a touch too low. But there's some really nice reverb and attack on the synth flute. It kind of sounds like someone's blowing into it.
It's a really strange song if you also think about
Yeah.
this. I mean, I'm picking this for strongest
Oh
though,
well.
because there's just so much going on here. Like, yeah, he's got the Nile Rodgers kind of riff
Mm.
going, but the horns on the chorus are like something out of the 1960s, which must have been really odd for something out in 79 because you're
Mm.
thinking the disco. I mean, everything else is disco in there except he's got this kind of 1960s horn sound going. The
And that's
chorus
when
kind of,
Quincy Jones was playing. That's when he was a
yes,
musician before he started producing.
exactly. He is kind of like there's a few songs on this album where he's taking it back to the 60s and just doing something very old school and classic.
He started
Like
off as a jazz piano player and composer.
like the chorus is very 60s too. And it's really strange how the lead vocals are so low in the mix and the backing vocals are what's over everything.
Hmm.
And of course, since it's Michael doing all the vocals, it's not an ego thing.
Right.
It's that that's the intention to have that chorus really move things along.
Hmm.
But the keyboards in this are also those are really different here.
Yeah.
Like not really in the disco um I like the intro is kind of sounds a bit prog influenced to me,
I
that
think Steve Picaro worked on this, if I recall correctly.
yeah.
Keyboardist from Toto, who was very ahead of his time when it came to synthesizers.
Wait, he
Kind of a
worked on
genius
this too?
synthesizer. I know
Like
Jeff did. I'm pretty sure Steve did as well. Um,
I mean, they're of course the back Toto's the backing band of Thriller,
yeah,
but I didn't realize he
I know Jeff did the
Oh,
drummer.
you're
I'm pretty
right.
sure Steve did as well. Okay, I wasn't
Steve,
100% sure.
that's the thing you really can't follow with this because there are so many synth
Hmm.
programmers and players. Picaro programmed track 6 and 9.
Okay.
Uh, so it's Greg
Oh, Phil Game's
Fillingan's.
another genius synth
That's him
player.
on this.
Yeah. He did a ton of stuff in the '80s, but the synths aren't quite like '84 new wave, but they're not '70s. They're kind of a bridge between.
Right. They're ahead of their time, definitely.
Mhm.
Like, but they're very prog influenced, I
Yeah.
feel. And then when
Well,
you
that's
get those later keys,
who was using synthesizers before the '80s. Prague
that's true. It's prog. Uh, and then those
and Kraftwerk.
keyboards later, where it kind of like gets very funky. It's kind of like a Kraftwerk kind of thing in there
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
So I was just like, there's so much hidden in this
Yeah.
song. It's probably his best lead vocal too, I think, even though
Mhm.
it's low in the mix and he can't really hear it all that well.
Uh-huh.
But it just all works.
Track three, Working Day and Night. This is my pick for favorite. Second one written by Michael Jackson. The other one that he gets full writing credit for. Um, I like that mix of scatting and percussion at the beginning. Great groove. Love the riff. Great guitar sounds. Again, two wonderful like funk sounds. Um, I think he wrote the best songs. These two and Beat It, Billie Jean. Um, but there's another one on Thriller that is brilliant that he wrote himself. I can't remember which one. Um, Great harmonies in the chorus. Love the horn parts in the chorus as well. Love that synth bass in the second verse and the instrumental part, the bass especially in the instrumental part.
Was Human Nature on Thriller? I forget.
Yes, but he didn't write that. David
Okay.
Page from, I think it was David Page from Toto wrote it.
Okay.
Or no, it might have been Steve Picard, one of the keyboard players. Um, anyway,
So I mean, holy cow. This was right up there with me, probably my second favorite of
uh,
the album. It's straight up James Brown,
yeah,
obviously. And it made me wonder about the relationship between James Brown and Michael Jackson or James Brown and Quincy Jones. I mean,
I'm sure they
uh,
work together.
it led me to find like a YouTube clip of Michael going up and doing like a James Brown dance right in front of
Hmm.
James Brown, and James Brown just being like, "What?"
And career-wise, the two were basically contemporaries.
hmm Yeah, but he was like a little kid,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure Brown was a big influence on him.
and kind of wish that Brown had worked with Quincy Jones a bit.
Mhm.
I mean,
They didn't. Okay, I was presuming there had to be some
I don't think they did
collaboration
because
there.
James Brown was a control freak.
Well,
I
true,
mean,
true, true.
everything was,
And Q was a bit as well.
yeah.
Quincy
Um,
Jones, he went by Q a lot.
Yeah. I had to have his QJ in my notes because JB and MJ and JB and QJ. But this sounds just so tight. And I was thinking like if I was an AI evil genius, I would try to get like what would this sound like if David Byrne sang the lead vocals and then have Michael Jackson sing Born Under Punches by the Talking Heads
Oh God.
because the two are very similar and done very close to the same time where they're just both straight up taking the James Brown sound
Mhm.
and working them like this. It's a real, I would say, Get Up Off That Thing is the one that this
Yeah,
song is
yeah,
very much modeled from, but
hmm
the production is just fresh as hell,
yeah.
even by today's standards, I'd
Mhm.
say.
Track four, Get on the Floor. This was co-written by Michael Jackson and the late great Louis Johnson, the bassist on most of this album. Great bass line, of course. Good groove. A little too disco for my taste.
Oh yeah,
Again,
all in the disco here.
yeah, the vocal is low in that opening chorus, but it's fine for the rest of the track. I like Jackson in his lower register just because we never really heard it much.
Yeah,
Um, and I love the vocal percussion thing at the start of the break.
the strings and horns, of course, are your standard disco.
Hmm.
The guitar is just fucking amazing, though. And this is just the time of disco, and it's
It's
what
79 though. It's almost the end.
ah yeah, I guess you could say that. it is what it was going though, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
It was the time for it. It's like hair metal in '89.
right. Yeah, fair point. Um, Track 5, Off the Wall. Nice kind of eerie opening. I
What a
like that
weird
low
intro.
synth. Hmm?
That's such a weird intro.
Yeah.
Like somebody maniacally laughing or whatever. I'm not sure
Sort
what
of a
that was.
precursor to Thriller.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like he was had it in the back of his head, more something more cinematic.
Hmm.
And that's what he was working with Quincy. For,
Yeah, yeah.
They worked together on The Wiz and he was thinking, I want to sound cinematic
Hmm.
too. And that's why he definitely chose him for his first this is his fifth album, but this is his first
Hmm.
without the Jacksons, really.
I was looking at his previous album covers. I think it's one or two before this. There's a picture of him holding an acoustic guitar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm totally not familiar with any of his solo work before this. So,
From what I understand, he played a little bit of guitar, a little bit of keyboards, but
yeah.
not really even enough to write. So I just got a kick out of him posing with this acoustic guitar because it's completely, even at the time, doing the kind of Jackson-ish stuff, Jackson
Hmm.
5-ish stuff, not really fitting of his music. I remember there in Guitar Player magazine back in the 80s, I saw this ad for, I think it was an ad for a mixing console, but it showed someone who looked very much like Michael Jackson from the back, sitting at a mixing console with a Les Paul to his right.
Huh.
Because it was in a guitar magazine, I guess it just kind of gave this impression that Michael Jackson was a guitar player. I had to look it up, of course, the minute I had the internet,
Yeah,
and he
that is
played a
really
little bit, but not really. Kind of probably what led to Beat It. He just had an appreciation for the instrument.
yeah.
Anyway, back to Off the Wall. Like that low synth in the verse, good groove. I like the verse melody, great harmonies in the pre-chorus. I like the layered vocals in the chorus, and there's a great vocal in the bridge.
I mean, this is where the bass really
Hmm.
just kicks your ass.
Yeah.
Uh, like I was like, Louis Johnson, huh? I gotta find some more of his work.
Oh, absolutely look him up. Just genius bassist.
I think Level 42 was hugely influenced
Oh,
by this.
Mark King, big, big. I don't know. I've never seen any quotes where he said this, but yeah, clearly very, very influenced by Louis Johnson.
Yeah.
Um, Larry Graham invented slap bass.
All
Louis
right.
Johnson perfected it. There are the icons. Larry Graham invented it. Louis Johnson perfected it in the '80s, and then Flea kind of did a new thing with it and
Yeah.
took it in a different direction and kind of modernized it. And we're still kind of in that era now, I think. Although there are some guys now, some lesser known players who are really innovating it again. Anyway, on to track 6, Girlfriend.
Yikes.
Yeah. There's some interesting synth sounds. It's got a nice groove. I like the bass part after the chorus, but it's just too saccharine for me.
I couldn't. I made it through once.
Yeah.
I was in about the second listen and I was just like, dude, you should have laid off the Paul McCartney. I know he
Hmm.
was a Beatle,
Yeah.
but goddamn, this was just too syrupy.
Uh,
And that, and I was like, whoa, and I thought the stuff he did on Thriller was bad with Paul McCartney.
uh. He wrote that one by himself. The Girl Is Mine, by the way.
Yeah.
Jackson did.
Yikes.
Track
Uh,
7. Oh, go ahead. You have more? I thought
no,
you're not done bashing on it.
nah, I am done. Yeah.
Track 7, She's Out of My Life. I like the electric piano on this one. Great vocal melody. There's some really interesting harmonic choices with the keyboards. It's an interesting placement after Girlfriend.
Yeah, it's a disaster because you can't have two ballads like that in a
But
row.
if I ignore Girlfriend, if I just wipe that from my memory, this is a really beautiful ballad. I like the sparse
Oh,
arrangement. Some nice restraint. The bridge kind of builds a little, but they don't go full with it. They keep
in
it
fact,
mellow.
I wouldn't have minded if he'd got even more sparse with it, like
Mhm.
like an acoustic guitar or
Yeah,
something like that. But this was good too, just minimal
yeah.
keys. Uh, this was originally written for Sinatra. Did you
Oh,
see?
okay. I
Yeah,
saw a picture of Sinatra, but I didn't read
it's
why it was there.
written by Tom Baller. I think he's the guy that wrote some Partridge Family stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just this gut-wrenching kind of ballad where, she left me and I was
Mhm.
an idiot and all that, and you can kind of hear him crying at the end of the
Yeah.
performance. Really weird there. But yeah, maybe this would have been better if they had mixed the tracking up, like split the ballads up, put one on one side and
Or
one on the
just leave
other.
girlfriend off.
Yes, yes. How about that? They said they had like 100 different songs
Probably.
that Michael and Q, had to sort through
Yeah.
and pick out the best. And I guess because his name was Paul McCartney, they had to do
Oh, he
that
wrote
one.
that one?
Girlfriend?
It was written by McCartney. I didn't notice that part.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
Paul. That is why that is so bad.
I swear he's written some. Well, he has written. He wrote some great songs with the Beatles.
Of course, he's written some great songs. He's also written some pretty
Yeah.
pretty bad things.
Uh-huh.
I mean, even John Lennon called some of his, used
Mhm.
the words granny shite
Silly
when
love
he would
songs.
describe some of his, yeah,
Simply having
come
a
on,
wonderful Christmas
silly love
time.
songs. 70s Paul McCartney. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
don't have the patience for that.
Same. Same. No More Lonely Nights was good, largely because of Gilmore. Anyway, they should have left girlfriend off of it.
Yes,
And then that would have really stood out better.
definitely.
Track 8, I Can't Help It. Great bass synth, good groove. I like the pitch shifting synths, the one that kind of start lower and go up, kind of glide
Yeah,
up.
I mean, this is a Stevie Wonder song,
Hmm.
and it shows.
Yeah,
You can,
another one who was way ahead of his time in terms of synthesis.
you know, it's something when he sings other people's songs,
Mm.
when it's another singer, he really pays tribute,
Yeah,
Michael. Like he really tries to channel that singer. Like he kind of went for Sinatra and the one thing, and then here he's really channeling Stevie. I think a girlfriend he really tries to channel Paul, which kind of leads to how that led. But this just, I mean, was a nice boost after two ballads in a row.
yeah. Also, like the gang vocals in the chorus, because it's not really a harmony, but you can tell it's more than one Michael.
Kind of has a like a European cabaret feel to it,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's just very, very smooth and easy.
Hmm. Track 9, It's the Falling in Love. This one features Patty Austin. Good groove in the beginning, nice harmonies, but it's really dated. Though I do like the slap bass in the chorus. Um, I almost wasn't sure if she was the one singing the second verse because their voices are pretty similar.
Okay, I'm glad it's not just me. I'd wondered that. Like her voice is not very far off of his voice,
Hmm.
and I'm not really sure the point of having a duet with two very similar sounding voices.
Yeah.
But as a disco song, this is probably the second best disco song on the album.
Hmm.
And it could just be because I hadn't really heard it before, but I mean, the bass. What more can you want for the
Yeah.
bass, though? You know?
And I'm not even that big a fan of slap bass, largely because it got abused after Flea.
Yeah.
Um, but Lewis Johnson is was the master.
He knew what the fuck he was doing. There was no
Yeah.
no question about that.
And track 10, Burn This Disco Out. Great opening, kind of fanfare, great groove, great verse riff. I love the density of the arrangement in this one. I love the wall of sound, which is not something I
Yeah.
typically say. Um, Great mix of synths and guitars, great slap bass. Like the low vocal at the end of the chorus, and that horn riff in the last chorus, or
I
just
love
before the last chorus.
those lower vocal dubs. I'm
Hmm.
I'm assuming that is
Yeah,
actually
that's him.
Michael's
He
voice where
had quite
he's
a
saying
range.
that low part. And I kind of wish he'd used that more,
Hmm.
even though it's kind of goofy. But it's a good sound. It's a good contrast,
Yeah.
which was the problem with the duet in the last track,
Hmm.
was there was no contrast.
Yeah.
So he should have sang at a lower register with Patty Austin, like he was singing here. The bass here just fucking destroys though.
Yeah.
I can't get past that. I mean, this is really good. I mean, this is a disco climax, obviously,
Mhm.
and it's about the DJ, playing you out.
Yeah.
And Quincy, of course, just, I mean, this he runs away with this one,
Yeah.
really. Just the wall of sound.
So do you recommend it?
I'm not a disco person myself,
Hmm.
but I mean, this is definitely prob this would have to be my favorite Michael Jackson album.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. You were the one who picked off the wall, largely for the similar reasons why we didn't want to do Van Halen one for for Eddie Van Halen. Everyone was going to be talking about it,
Yeah.
so you wanted to do something kind of offbeat, and it was absolutely the right call.
Well, I think I think Thriller's overrated, honestly. That might be a controversial opinion.
Mhm.
It might be a hot take, but I follow this band that does covers of albums.
Uh-huh.
They're a reggae band,
Mm.
Easy Star All Stars, and they decided to do cover Thriller. And when you just put it out on paper, I'm like, this isn't that good an album, you know? Like when you hear who's starting something and the song Thriller is just ridiculous in itself, where it just, I
Got to be
mean,
starting something. That's the other one that he wrote on Thriller. Couldn't
just
remember the name.
horrendous lyrics.
Oh yeah, you never listen to him for his lyrics.
Uh, you're a vegetable. I mean, just
Yeah.
putting that into it just embarrassing.
Mm.
And yeah, Thriller is just really goofy as fuck too. And Beat It, would we really be talking about much if it wasn't for, bringing Eddie Van Halen, which of course
Well, Eddie Van
that's
Halen and the riff, and I gotta shout out. Well, on that one, Steve Lukather, and on both albums,
yeah.
Dean Parks, and one of my all-time favorites, Paul Jackson Jr. Quite a while back, I bemoaned the lack of credits on albums these days, where you don't know who the session players were. And I said there were session players that I grew up worshiping because, yeah, as a guitar player, because I saw their name. Paul Jackson Jr. was one of those guys, just the greatest rhythm guitarist of all time.
And this is kind of like one of those albums where a lot of people bemoan that these days, where
Mm.
there are a shit ton of people brought in.
It's a pop record, That's comes par with the course, especially for Quincy.
Right. I think the older people that bemoan this are ignoring that there were tons of people brought in for older albums
Hmm.
too.
Yeah,
They just
Wrecking
didn't
Crew.
credit them. Yes, the Wrecking Crew. And a lot of the times those guys didn't get credit.
Right.
They were
That's
just
why the
doing
movie
it
exists.
yeah. So that's a tale as old as time.
Right. And it's the pop tradition.
Yeah.
I went into this in an older episode, The Three Traditions, folk, formal, and pop.
Hmm.
Um, Search the pop tradition on our site if you want that full episode for the full explanation. But pop music started in musical theater.
Yeah, right. Right. The
The point
Gershwin stuff.
the point is to put on a good show.
Hmm.
Taking away the commercial aspect of it. The point is the production. It is the show. It is entertainment.
It's the final product.
Yeah. And so when that is your goal, when that is your value, that's the thing you're valuing. You bring in, and you're Quincy Jones and you've got Michael Jackson money. You bring in the best.
Did he have that kind of money at this point though? I mean, feels like early days.
He was still Michael Jackson, and they were still, massively famous for, a long time before this album. They were in the 60s. The Jackson 5, I think, were, massively famous.
Right, but like Joe was still very much a dominant
And
person
yeah,
and
I
had
think Joe was probably, ultimately signing the checks.
he you know he saw this as just like a side thing from
Yeah.
the Jackson 5. This wasn't like
Mhm.
the big thing. It was like, okay, you can do this as long as this doesn't interfere with the Jackson 5 schedule. I mean, this is just kind of a side
Mhm.
project until it came out and
Right.
became bigger than the Jackson 5.
But also, I talk about these people who played on the records because they eventually became legends.
Yeah.
In '79, Steve and Jeff Beccaro were just session players. I don't think
Right.
Toto existed yet,
Ooh, I think it may have. Like
but
when
they
was
weren't you know, they were getting scale.
Probably.
Louis Johnson was getting scale, whatever the session player scale in '79 was. Um, so it's good money, but he wasn't shelling out ridiculous amounts of money for famous musicians. He was hiring top quality session players who were not getting ridiculous amounts of money. They were getting paid well, but not ridiculous amounts of money. You know?
Yeah, a- and it is just this production. It is interesting to take that approach where you are trying to make it like a cinematic
Mm-hmm.
thing and just, yeah, casting people like that.
Right. One quick thing before we go, I want to recommend a book that Quincy Jones wrote about creativity that I listened to last year. 12 Notes on Life and Creativity. Great sort of biography of him, or sort of autobiography of him and his, thoughts about creativity. And that's it for Off the Wall. Until next time, when we'll finally be reviewing Beelzebubba by the Dead Milkmen. Always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life,
There you are.
are.